Hey guys, Edgar here. Guns for everyone. One of the things I absolutely hate is going to the doctors. If you've seen the title of this video, you kind of know where I'm going to. But I absolutely hate going to the doctors. There's a ton of reasons why I'm not a big fan of going to the doctors. But one of the things that has always been in the back of my mind is, why do these doctors ask about guns on the forms? They ask about guns, and they ask about stuff that is really not relevant to my visit. I've been fortunate enough to participate in as a advisory member for FIPI, the Firearms Injury Prevention Initiative. This is done under CU's Emergency Health out in Anschutz Center, or campus, if you will, in here in the state of Colorado. Um, I'm going to do some stuff with Penn State as well, and then we've done some stuff with CU Davis, and just recently with Children's Hospital here in the state of Colorado. I had the opportunity to help doctors and emergency department humans um, establish or design a screening for teenagers. This screening is to see what kind of risk they have for suicide. And as we were designing, we were talking, and we were having this conversation with doctors, and that's one of the questions that I had for doctors is, why do doctors ask about guns? Now, I know a lot of you guys are like, well, it's the government. The government forces them to do it. And I don't know of any law that requires them to ask it. I may be wrong, and I'm sure every state is going to be different, and I'm sure some states do require it. But it doesn't take long to jump online and find the states that require this stuff. So if I'm sure there's some of it that it's politically motivated, and I'm not going to disregard that, but I don't want to make this the focus of the video, the politics side of it. I want to have a conversation, and I want to have a discussion and convey what the doctors told me. Now, some of you guys are super conspiracy theorists, and some of you guys are on signal apps, and you only do fucking Bitcoin, and everybody is out to get you, and we didn't land on the moon, and all that shit. This video, there's no helping you. There's no reasoning with you. So you're probably not even gonna listen to anything that we've got to say. If you're a human who understands that we can become reasonable if we just have a conversation with one another, it's probably the video for you. Um, Again, I'm not saying there may not be a political motivation to why doctors ask this stuff. That's just not what I want to focus on. I want to focus on these conversations that I had with humans at a place where we were designing screening. First off, super proud that Guns for Everyone was part of that conversation. Guns for Everyone was part of designing, and we will continue to help design these screenings because gun people should be there. The gun community should be at this table designing these questionnaires for teenagers and for adults, and we should be there. Why? Because they should take into consideration the way we see stuff, and we should be a part of it. If we don't want the government to be a part of it, then we should accept the responsibility. But at any rate, had this conversation, and I asked the one doctor. She's a pediatrician. She's an ER doctor, so she gets all of the kids that come in for various reasons, and one of those reasons is suicide attempt. And I asked her, like, why are you guys tasked with this? Like, what is the reason behind you asking these questions? And her response was pretty simple, and I don't know why I never thought about this. Maybe because I'm too focused on the politics that I forgot that at some level, these people are human as well. Now, this doctor, she made a disclaimer before we continue. She said, I'm a gun owner. Grew up in the Midwest hunting. My husband likes guns, and my husband doesn't like the question on the forms either. He absolutely hates answering that question. He avoids answering the question. So she was kind of on our side. At any rate, as we were having this conversation, she said something that is something that I've never thought about, and I don't know why I didn't think about it. But when I asked her, "Why are you guys tasked with asking this question? What's it to you?" And for me, I just wanted to understand. I go to these places. I'm actually involved in a lot of this stuff to get to know myself better, to challenge my own bias, to get outside of the echo chamber. A lot of people in the gun community would never participate in this stuff. There's actually a big old LinkedIn thing by a mental health pro gun mental health organization that is not Walk the Talk America. It's a big, huge LinkedIn about how FIPPY is this and this person is that and this person is that. And I'm like, I don't need to agree. Like for me, our perspective is we don't need to agree with you to sit in a room with you and have dialogue with you and understand each other. We don't need to agree. But when it comes to suicide prevention, when it comes to minimizing negative outcomes with firearms, and when it comes to doing this in a way where it does not involve politics, where it does not involve government, where it involves just community, I'm all in. That's what FIPPY does. Everything we've done with FIPPY so far has just been community. It's been people who don't necessarily agree on the politics, but do agree on minimizing negative outcomes with firearms. At any rate, um, I asked this individual, and her response was, again, very simple. It's because we see the patients. And at first I was like, well, yeah, of course. But it was like, oh, yeah, these people come to you when they attempt suicide, whether successful or unsuccessful. You're probably going to see them as you're trying to save their life, as you're trying to patch them up. You're having these conversations. And the natural follow-up question to that is like, well, if they try to commit suicide with the gun, obviously they do have guns in the house. So why ask that question? It was like, because maybe it wasn't that. Maybe it was pills. Because they also ask about pills. That was part of the conversation. Was how do you talk about pills and where do you put the pills and stuff like that? It's a huge, good conversation about this stuff. They took into consideration like the guns that we use for self defense. Like some teenagers actually have access to guns for self defense. These are doctors that were like, "Hey, yeah, I know family members who, um, maybe not here in the state of Colorado because we don't want to get them in trouble, but the 17-year-old kid knows the combination to the gun for self defense reasons. You can't deny them self defense. If a bad guy breaks in a bad neighborhood, they ought to have the right to defend themselves. These are the type of conversations that we were having, and this is why it's valuable for the gun community to be a part of it. But the follow-up is if they tried committing suicide, then obviously there's their bro. But here's the response to that, which I never considered because I'm not a doctor and I don't work in an ER and I don't see it from the outside, just trying to judge and trying to come up with my own conspiracy theories. It's not that I don't believe in any fucking conspiracy theories. Like I know the government's shitty. Like I believe that 100%. I don't need to believe in conspiracies to know that the government ain't shit. Like I don't need to. But when you get so obsessed about just politics, 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 you forget to ask the real questions. How does it work, right? People who deny the moon landing is because they don't know how it works. So I want to know how this shit works. I want to understand how it goes. And the very simple answer is, well, a lot of these people come to the ER and they have other symptoms. They just don't know how to verbalize that stuff. They don't know how to verbalize anxiety. They don't know how to verbalize, for whatever reason, a variety of reasons. And they have a stomach ache or they have a headache and they feel dizzy and they feel, and sometimes it's just stress. And sometimes they get discharged with just regular old, you're just stressed or you got a tummy ache or whatever. And within 3 months, a lot of these kids end up attempting suicide. In adults, I've got the numbers here. Up to 43.8% of people who die by suicide had at least one emergency department visit in the year prior, indicating missed opportunities for intervention, even when that visit wasn't psychiatric in nature. So, regardless, this is for adults, but regardless of whether it was a mental health issue or not, a lot of these humans who got 43%, almost 50% of the people who committed suicide went to the ER for several reasons. And again, a lot of us get headaches and we get tummy aches and we get whatever aches, soreness. We feel lethargic, we feel whatever, and we attribute it to a medical thing. And it might just be anxiety, it might just be something else, it might just be an overwhelming amount of stress. And we don't get taught how to deal with that stuff. Walk to Talk America has this fantastic thing. Go check it out on how to navigate your feelings and your emotions and all that stuff. I know it seems cheesy, and for those of you guys that are super macho, you're not going to want to deal with that stuff. But the numbers are right there. The With kids, it's not as high, but with kids, 10 to 15% from broader pediatric data gives a general risk level within a year of initial attempt. So this is here we go. About 10 to 15% of pediatric patients who present to an emergency department for a suicide attempt will make a repeat attempt within 12 months. So yeah, we can talk about politics some other time. We can talk about how the government just wants to take our guns, and that's probably true. We see it here in the state of Colorado. There's a lot of evidence for that stuff, and I'm not disregarding that the Tom Sullivans of the world, and I'm not disregarding that the Christina Durans of the world, and I'm not saying that the Lorena Garcias of the world don't want to take your guns away. I'm not saying that in any way, shape, or form. I think we just have to take a step back from that politics and understand that these are still humans that are attempting suicide, and how do we help them? I firmly believe that this is our responsibility. If we don't want the government to deal with this stuff, if we don't want the doctors to ask the questions, then we have to step up. We have to create the questionnaires for our kids. We have to ask our kids how they're doing. We have to um, whatever with our kids. I haven't been perfect, but I hope that my kids kind of understand how much I love them and I appreciate them, and whatever. Even if though I do say if I could go back and not have kids, I would. That's a deeper philosophical question, but I think they've grown up to understand that I've always appreciated them and I've always been mostly proud of them. Not in everything they do, but in most everything they do. So it's that, right? Like, are you asking the questions? Because if you're not asking the questions, if you're not involved in your kids, then they're going to go to the doctor and they're going to feel a certain way, and that stomach ache or that headache quickly turns into it's really depression, it's really anxiety, it's really some other thing that is a mental health disorder that needs to get taken care of by you, primarily by you, and by the teen primarily, and try and prevent that next visit, the more tragic visit. So why do doctors ask that? Variety of reasons, but I just found out that the primary reason is because they're the ones that take care of them. The doctors are the ones that see the people coming in. The doctors see the domestic violence stuff. The doctors see the drug abuse shit. It's not even a gun thing. It's the other stuff, the drug abuse shit. So they don't want more patients. Now I know some of you guys conspiracy theorists. No, United Health wants all the patients in the world, and that's fine for insurance companies. But that doesn't mean the ER doctor wants to have an overwhelming amount of suicide attempts in one particular day, whether it be by gun or whether it be with medications or other stuff. Um, Not everything is a conspiracy. Some things are, but not everything's a fucking conspiracy. Sometimes it's just doctors don't want to see your kid in the ER for a suicide attempt. They want to keep it simple. They want to do the flu stuff, and they want to fucking the sniffles and sprained ankle and shit like that. I don't think they want to see your kid for suicide attempt. So when we look at the numbers, when we look at the data, 10 to 15% of pediatric patients who present to an emergency department for suicide attempt will make a repeat attempt within 12 months. So within that 12 months, we got to figure out where to put the guns, how to talk to our kids about keeping away from the guns, and we have to reevaluate: is it worth having a gun in the house when my kid's suicidal? That's up to you to decide, right? That's not up to me to decide. That name "Guns for Everyone" isn't because we legitimately believe that every single human should own a gun, but we believe the government should not be in charge of deciding who gets guns and who doesn't. But if we don't want the government to do it, then we have to do it. So you have to figure out, if your kid does have a suicide attempt, let's figure this shit out. What's more important? What's more valuable? What's worth risking? What's not? With a risk benefit? My expected benefit should significantly outweigh my known or perceived risks. I think your kid's life is well worth a quick access safe. I think your kid's life is well worth trying to come up with the plan so that your kid doesn't have access to the gun and you still keep your family safe. Like, we need to talk about that stuff. Again, adults, let's go back to that shit. 43.8% of people who died by suicide had at least one emergency department visit in the year prior, indicating missed opportunities for intervention, even when that visit wasn't psychiatric in nature. So that's why I wanted to make this video. This is the conversation I want to have. We can have the politic conversation later on, and I think it's worth discussing how they're trying in some areas to weaponize our medical um, industry, I guess, if you will, or our health, to try and take our guns away. I'm not saying that that's not happening, but we have to look at this shit objectively. We have to look at this shit beyond the conspiracy theories. We have to look at this shit beyond, because your kid deserves it, right? Like, your kid doesn't want to just hear about how the doctors just want to take their guns away. I'm not saying some don't, but I was just in a room full of doctors, and a great majority of them, in fact, not a single fucking one of them. I had one nurse that did, but none of the doctors ever brought up politics. Again, I had one nurse who wanted to get political, and that shit got shut down pretty fucking quick. But not a single one of them said, "Let's change the policies." They all accepted, "Hey, we see the patients. You're the fucking parent. You're the gun owner. We need to figure this shit out together. We shouldn't rely on the government." That was the common consensus: is we should figure this shit out as the gun community, as somebody who is in the gun community, as somebody who runs an organization that certifies farms instructors, operates national farms competitions, provides training for end users. I think it's our responsibility to not allow the government to weaponize our medical system to take our guns away. So how do we do that? Participate in it. Be involved in reducing negative outcomes with firearms. That includes suicide with teenagers. That includes suicides amongst adults. Be more proactive on how we reduce suicide among our community and people who don't own guns. Shit, this might be our kid's friend who shows up to our house, and we don't know them. We know of them, and we know that they're friends with our kids, but they may be struggling, and they know that you have guns. I know it's inconvenient for you to store the gun away. I know it's inconvenient for you to have a quick access safe, but come on. It's either we do it or the government does. And I choose us every single fucking time. I choose us every single time. We are responsible. We have the guns. We have to be the ones that take the lead in reducing negative outcomes with firearms. If we don't do it, the government will do it for us. So why do doctors ask questions about guns? A great majority of them, not all of them, a great majority of them are kind of just tired of seeing kids trying to commit suicide with your firearms. And the problem with firearms is that is very fucking lethal. There's all kinds of stats that we can pull up in numbers, and um, people who attempt suicide with firearms, they don't tend to make it. It tends to be very successful, and that's not a good thing. That's not a bad thing. I know what you're thinking is, well, if they don't try it with the gun, they're going to try it with pills. That's not as successful. A great majority of the people that try and commit suicide with pills or by cutting or any of that stuff are nowhere near as successful as they are with firearms. So as cynical and as fucked up as it sounds, is like fucking give them another way to do it because it's not as successful. And a lot of humans who fail in their attempt regret it. Now, some of them don't. About 15%. We just read about 15% of them who attempt teenagers who attempted within a year reattempt, whether successful or not. That's a different story, but it's a pretty small number, right? It's about 85%, 80%, depending on where you're at with this, who don't go on to reattempt suicide if the first one fails. I'd rather deal with that number than about 90%, depending on the data that you look at. About 90% of people who attempt suicide with the firearm are successful. Only about 10% of them survive. I think I'd rather the opposite on that shit. So we have to be more proactive on this stuff. We have to take the shit seriously. We have to have a conversation with their kids about how to stay safe with the firearms and still be involved in the community. And I think keeping your kid alive is significantly more important than what your friends are going to think about if you have a fucking gun in a quick access safe. There's a lot of quick access safes out there that allow you to defend your life and keeps the guns away from the kids. So yeah, it was interesting to have this conversation with the doctors. I'm glad I'm part of this stuff. Like I said, I'm if anything, I'm more part of FIPI and I'm part of these advisory boards, the Firearm Safety Coalition here in the state of Colorado, the Farm Safety Coalition. Glad to be a part of that stuff. If anything, is just to get out of the echo chamber and listen to other humans that I may not agree with, that I may not agree with, and I'll never agree with on the policy stuff. Guns for Everyone National is against all laws that are anti-gun. Every single one of them, even the ones gun owners think they make sense. Fucking not a single one of them makes sense to us. But what does make sense is community coming together and trying to solve the problems that politicians can never seem to solve. What does make sense to us is the gun industry taking the lead in reducing negative outcomes with firearms. The gun community needs to take the lead on this. This includes you. Doesn't take much, but it's pretty simple stuff that you can do. It seems cheesy and it sounds not so macho and not so, but it's the responsibility we have. That's part of being a responsible gun owner is reducing negative outcomes with firearms. That's through education. That's through understanding what your kids are going through. That's understanding your emotions. That's learning how to navigate through your emotions. I'm saying this as somebody who has always struggled with this depression shit. And I've had to learn how to navigate life with this depression shit. Um, I have people that I can text. I have people that I can talk to. My wife will be the first one to tell you how I navigate through the system. It's not super comfortable, but it's a system that needs to happen. It absolutely needs to happen. I know when to separate myself from the firearms, and luckily I'm not. For me. It's not a depressive depression, if that fucking makes sense. It's more of a nihilistic side of it. I've talked about this many times in podcasts, but I have a responsibility to myself. I have a responsibility to my family to be vocal with them about this so that they know what's going on in my head and how I'm feeling on certain days and when I'm not feeling so awesome. And we may have a plan for me if it gets super extreme. It never really gets to that super extreme, but um we'll come up with the plan and a decision and again the people that I text, but we have that responsibility. You ought to have a little group of humans that you can text and have a conversation and all that stuff and even if it's just a quick little like, hey, like I actually need you right now, if I can stop what you're doing. It's tough to be the person getting those text messages. It's tough to be the person sending the text messages. it's a lot of responsibility, but that's why we need the community. We often say community because we don't know what the fuck that means, and I think we need to change that. I think we need to get to a point where we actually know what the fuck that means. So, at any rate, I hope that made sense. I know a lot of you guys are gonna not watch the video and talk your shit in the comments and say your political stuff and fucking probably talk shit about the left, and the left is going to talk shit about the right, and that doesn't help anybody. That doesn't help the teenagers who are attempting suicide. That doesn't help the adults who are attempting suicide. So at any rate, I hope this was useful for you guys. If anything, I just got it out there into the ether, and hopefully, or the internet, and hopefully it lands with a few people, and most of you guys will probably argue about it. If anything, we can use this video to kind of prove that people will argue about anything, including doctors asking why you have guns or if you have guns, because they don't ask why you have guns, they ask if you do. And that's part of just coming up with an action plan if your kid is presenting risk of suicide, or for you to have an action plan if you do um, present risk of suicide. It's one, they treat the people, they treat the humans that come into the ER. And then two is if you are at risk of suicide and you have medication at your house, or if you have access to things that can harm you, um, and there needs to be an action plan. So it's we need to be a part of that. We need, the gun community needs to have these conversations. Let's have an action plan. If there's people around you who are suicidal, who have problems, and a firearm can be risky to be around for them, we ought to have plans. Bristlecone is a fantastic resource. High Country Armory is a good resource. Walk the Talk America is a good resource, but you are a great resource for somebody. So I think we just need to kind of step up and accept that we are great resources for somebody. So, anyways, hope this made sense. Hope it sparks a conversation. If anything else, I look forward to the thumbs down.